Chapter 7. Saving and Healing Grace, or Medicine as Sacrament. In the foregoing chapter, it has been shown that God is present in nature and is the primal source of all its active powers. The material world and all it contains is a perpetual manifestation and revelation of the divine being, both in its greatest and least parts and particles. Paul L. teaches that the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. All the forces of nature are but manifestations of a divine energy. This is true of the action of medicines on the human body. Hence, all curative agents are of the nature of a sacrament or means of grace. There is an underlying truth in the church dogma of grace, though limited in its application. Grace has been defined to mean favor. In the religious parlance of the church, it is made to signify an unmerited favor or gift. In the epistle to the Ephesians, Paul L., in a single verse, gives us the whole doctrine of grace. By grace are ye saved, through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. The idea of grace, as it exists in the mind of most people independent of all theological definitions, is that of a help or influence imparted to us directly or indirectly through means from the divine being. It is an augmentation of our powers by a force given us from our vital relation to God, so that we are able to do or to bear what otherwise would be impossible to us. By grace we are saved or healed morally and physically. Grace, as a divine principle in nature and as a spiritually sanative force, may be imparted to us directly from God or through some intervening medicine. That it may come to us through more external means is the idea on which the doctrine of the efficacy of the treatment is based. But it is a mental law that it is only through faith that any benefit is received from these. In the Catholic Church, extreme unction has often turned out a means of cure. But, without faith, a few drops of oil has no healing efficacy, and one piece of bread, or a few drops of water or wine, is no better than any other bread or water or wine. If our faith in God and the universality of Eli's life, the idea that we live in God and that everything else has its being in Him, is to us a religious consciousness and a certainty, then we have no need of any sacramental or intervening agency between us and Him. Crutches are of no use, but rather a hindrance to one who is not lame. The divine love and life need not to be materialized or come to us through any outward forms of manifestation. To the ignorant Catholic or the feeble-minded Protestant, the sacramental elements, the bread and the wine, represent the presence of God and are the visible medium through which saving grace is imparted. The more active their faith in these outward symbols, the more benefit they receive from them, for they are saved by a grace of which they are made receptible through faith. It is the same with medicine. For if one cannot come into a direct communication with the infinite life, let him connect himself with the divine being in his saving health by means of visible and material remedies. It matters little what they are, provided they bring the patient into communicative contact with the normal source of life and health. The sacraments are supposed to be a spiritual medicine, or a means through which the divine life is made communicable to us. In them, as in all medicinal preparations, God descends from the unapproachable and, to many minds, the inconceivable region of the absolute, to the lowest depths of the spiritual needs of men. They are an exteriorization of the love and life of God. Indeed, thus it brings them within the grasp of the sensuous mind, so that they may become appropriable to that range of the intellect, but to the spiritually enlightened mind God is everywhere, and consequently in all things. And there is not a point in the wide universe where we may not come into communicative contact with the whole undivided and indivisible deity. His presence is not recognized by the spiritual mind only in the sacramental elements of bread and wine, but everything becomes a sacrament of good and means of saving grace to us. It is the office of Christianity to make general what has been considered as limited and partial. Thus the sacraments are not the only point in the material universe where man can meet God. It is better to meet Him there than nowhere. Every material thing may be to us as God made visible and accessible, and consequently as a sacrament, the food we eat, the water we drink, the medicine we take, every object of beauty and grandeur around us, the mountain summit, the flowing stream, the dew-gemmed flower, the waving field of grain, the summer cloud, the morning song of the birds, the vernal shower, and the autumn leaf, all these and many more are, or may be, sacraments to the soul and means of communion with God. As God is the only life, everything that has any therapeutic value or healing influence is of the nature of a sacrament, that is, it is the communication of a divine saving grace through an external medium, which in itself is of secondary importance. We need the divine help every moment, but never so consciously feel it as when sick and unhappy. And that through the medium of which the desired aid comes to us is to us a sacrament. Let the remedial agency belong to whatever school of medicine it may. Protestantism reduces the sacraments to 2, but the papal church has been more liberal and given us 7 channels through which a saving or spiritually healing grace may flow. But a genuine Christianity is Catholic in its spirit and nature, which, as the name primarily signifies, is that which is universal and inclusive, and is opposed to that which is particular and exclusive, and comprehends all that is good and true in every religion, past, present, and future. Its sacraments are not fixed at 2 or 7, but are all those external things that are or can be the means through which a spiritual aid and influence may come to us, and through which the feeble and ignorant may mount upward, as on a ladder, to communication with the divine life. In the light of this truth, it is easy to see that medicine is a sacrament to those whose faith needs some external support on which to lean, and the more spiritual the remedy, the more of a sacramental efficiency it has in it. For it is an eternal and necessary truth that it is by grace or an impartation of living force from God that we are saved and healed, and that comes to us through faith. Any remedial agency that places the sick in body or mind in vital communication with the central life is a holy sacrament and means of grace. The word sacrament originally signified the oath that a Roman soldier took of fidelity to the government, but has been employed in Christian literature as an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace or influence. All material things are only the outward expression or correspondence of some spiritual reality or essence which represents it to the senses. In the case of a medicine, it is the spiritual essence of the drug that gives it all its curative value and its power over that dynamic disturbance which, according to the system of Hahnemann, constitutes the disease for which it is given. This makes it of the nature of a sacrament. If a drug is not this, it has no therapeutic efficacy. This gives to the administration of medicines a sacred character, and the real physician is elevated to the dignity of a priest and even a vicar of God. As God is love, and, as Swedenborg taught a century ago, love is the life of man. All remedies administered by the hand of kindness, and are charged with its spirit, have an efficiency and spiritual power that they could not otherwise possess. They are, when viewed in the light of these truths, no longer like the goods and chattels that the merchant sells behind the counter, but they have a principle of spiritual life in them, and the physician executes the function of the priesthood in its divine reality. The ministerial and medical professions should never have come under the influence of the modern tendency to a division of labor, but should have remained one, and the priest, as in the older civilizations, should have been the physician of both soul and body. It is in accordance with the usus loquendi of the New Testament, or usual mode of speaking, to employ the words to heal and to save as equivalent and interchangeable expressions. The prayer of faith shall save, or heal, the sick. To the blind man, whom Ho restored to sight, Jesus said, "Thy faith hath saved thee." The Greek verb sozo, answering to our English word to save, is usually rendered to heal or make whole. A scheme of salvation that leaves out the restoration of the body to health, as is done in the churches of today, comes short of the primitive Christian idea and brings the pulpit under the reproof of the prophet, that it heals the hurts of humanity slightly or in part only. A religious system that sunders what God has joined together and does not furnish a medicine for soul and body both, will be deprived of more than half its salutary influence. The Church should at once come back to the original Christian method. It is well known that no missionaries are more successful than those who combine with the preaching of the gospel a successful medical practice. The fundamental error in religion has been in separating God too much from nature. Nature, as the word means, is that which is perpetually begotten and born of God, and is permanently attached to Him. There is not on one side a solitary God, and on the other an isolated universe, for the Creator is incessantly incarnated in each of His creatures, and they become each in a degree manifestations of Him, and their life is His life. According to this, as Cécile has said, God sleeps, as it were, in the mineral, dreams in the animal, and comes to consciousness in man. The presence of God is not confined to the narrow limits of the Holy of Holies in the temple, where the Jewish anthropomorphism, or view of God as a man, located Him on earth, nor to some distant world in the starry heavens, where the childish thought of the Church has placed Him. There is in all created things, what shall I call it? A divine internal virtue or essence. All things go forth from God into an outward expression, but never break away from Him, or lose their connection with Him. Under this view of the divine being and His existence in nature, every common bush is ablaze with God, as was that of Horeb to Moses. Every mountain is as holy as Sinai, every river as sacred as the Jordan, and the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the medicine we take have in them the sanctity and virtue of a sacrament, and may be to us a means of grace.